Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, there's Charles coming in. Good afternoon, everyone, joining us for this SLALMD Own the Web Wednesday. My name is Rebecca Jones. I am delighted that you are here. We will be recording this and, of course, putting it on the LMD site and also in our YouTube channel. And just a few housekeeping things, which is to ask you to keep yourselves on mute. If you have any questions at all, please just type them into the chat and we will relay those so that we have an interactive conversation. And I want to introduce Ray Pun, who is the coordinator for our professional development and is doing a fabulous job with these Own the Web Wednesdays. Welcome, Ray.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. We're really excited to have another webinar on our Own the Web series. As Rebecca said, part of the leadership management development group in SLA is focused on different types of case studies, what people are doing and working on to support their communities of users. And so today we have 3 presenters from Georgia Tech Library. So it's the really interesting case study that looks at how they are reorganizing and pivoting their services to support their users during COVID-19. And the presenters will discuss how the organization addressed the challenges of working with users in a remote environment. So we'll be focusing on online service, resource access, communication channels, and connect to the community. Our speakers today are Ximin Mi, Data Visualization Librarian at the Georgia Tech Library, Alison Valk, Instructional Coordinator and Multimedia Librarian for the Georgia Tech Library, and Justin Ellis, Public Services Lead and Co-Manager of the Georgia Tech Library's Gadget Service. You can find more on their bio and all their great accomplishments and work in the SLALMD page for this webinar, and would really like to extend my thanks to 3 of them for taking the time out today to give this presentation. Welcome, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Rebecca. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, I guess, depending on which time zone you are at. Thanks for having us today. We would like to, as Ray just introduced, we would like to talk a little bit about our work experience during COVID and how we work around some of the initial challenges to bring our services from a lot of them from the physical space to the virtual space. Can we go to the first slide? Actually, you already introduced us. I guess we can go to the next slide.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Valk, Multimedia Librarian and Instructional Coordinator at Georgia Tech, and I'm going to kick us off on this presentation. We're glad you're here with us today. So our discussion covers how many of our library service points responded to the recent health crisis and what we learned from having to pivot and change our service model. But we also explore what may result in permanent changes even after our in-person services resume. So I'll begin just by giving you a bit of background about the culture at Georgia Tech and the students that we serve, and how this may have laid the groundwork for us to adapt so quickly. But with that said, I think many of the adjustments that we made could be utilized in many different organizations as well. So the students that we serve, as with many schools, are coming in as digital natives. And this is a student population that's never been without the internet. They're accustomed to getting information on demand, whether that's smartphones or computers or what have you. And these students expect that faculty and universities are going to be utilizing more technology. So the Georgia Tech enrollment in 2019 was close to 40,000 students. About 42% of that is from the College of Engineering or engineering disciplines, and 36% was from the College of Computing. So together that makes up about 80% of our student body. So due to the nature of these subject areas, a lot of the students arriving at Georgia Tech, in many cases, are tech savvy and already interested in using technology to enhance their education. So in some senses, this pivot might not have been too much of a stretch for our student population. The Georgia Tech community has a culture of exploring and integrating new technologies into our learning, research, and work. And as faculty or staff, we're encouraged to experiment with new technologies. We have a real strong connection with the industry and business, especially the ones that are based in Atlanta. And, you know, for instance, we do a lot of, we often test, we participate in beta testing for new hardware and things like that with industry partners. The situation I'm thinking of is I remember we got an opportunity to test out some of the new VR headsets that were coming out. So in other words, we have a strong culture of experimenting with new technologies at Georgia Tech, and I think that this culture laid the groundwork for us to be able to quickly adapt to the COVID shutdown. Additionally, on top of this, Georgia Tech as a whole has been implementing a new infrastructure that supports virtual communication channels, so like chat, service request mechanisms, learning modules, accountability, and workflow management. Just prior to the COVID shutdown, the Institute began to roll out an enterprise-wide project management software to all the units on campus. And so people were starting to get familiar with these types of tools just before this happened. So I think that definitely sort of set the stage for us in certain ways. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the services we had to pivot quickly, which I'm deeply involved in, is instruction. Prior to COVID, we were offering both in-person and occasional virtual workshops. I would say about 75% of our workshops were in person and 25% were virtual. And for that 25%, we were making use of BlueJeans. And BlueJeans is a tool, an online meeting tool, but we were using it for classes. And that really picked up into high gear once the COVID shutdown happened. But we offer a variety of classes to support the curriculum, ranging from citation management to traditional things like research skills. But we also have a lot of workshops on data visualization and multimedia in order to support the technology-rich classes that are offered at Georgia Tech. The three types of classes that we offer are drop-in standalone workshops that are offered to the campus community and beyond, course integrated workshops that are designed in collaboration with campus faculty to support course assignments, and then 4 credit classes where librarians or archivists lead a group of students throughout the semester. And those are 4 credit classes. So those, in a nutshell, those are sort of the 3 types of classes that we offer. And pre-COVID, we didn't really have much in the way of asynchronous materials to accompany that, and classes were only occasionally recorded. But once the COVID shutdown happened, we had to immediately pivot these classes to serve the students where they were in their homes or remote locations. So right out the gate, we were addressing challenges such as connection issues, dealing with large numbers of students online. We had to make sure they had the right technical setup and were familiar with it in terms of, connecting with us and having the software that they needed for the classes. And also just standard stuff like student time management issues. When you're in an online class, there's a lot of dipping in and out and students showing up late and just little things like that you might not contend with for in-person classes. So there was this whole other set of issues that we had to deal with. But this led us to discovering some unexpected opportunities and allowed us to leverage existing tools and resources for use cases that they might not have been originally designed for. So in essence, we had to become creative thinkers through all this. Some of the opportunities that we found were increased attendance and reach. BlueJeans, since we went from basically mainly in-person classes to online classes, and we were utilizing BlueJeans for the most part for that, because of the ease of access where anyone can just click a link and join, our attendance skyrocketed on our drop-in workshops. We also found that the demographics of attendees coming to the classes changed as well, where for the in-person classes, we found we were primarily serving graduate students on campus, and they made up the majority of students that attended the classes. We ended up reaching all kinds of people in different locations, and undergraduates began to engage with us more. with the online classes. So that's been kind of a really pleasant development. And for student engagement, I think the use of online engagement tools such as virtual whiteboards and collaborative annotation tools increase engagement. I think there's something about the virtual environment that can make instructors more approachable. With the instructors being in their home and the students being in their home, there's sort of this personal nature to it. And I actually think that that caused some of the students to come out of their shell and engage with us further. We utilize tools like Microsoft Teams for some of our classes, especially our 4-credit classes that lasted the duration of the semester. Those MS Teams, I think, is a tool we probably will continue to use, but that we use that for class meetings and to distribute materials throughout the semester. So COVID really pushed us into an environment where we're having to utilize multiple communication channels, and I think in turn that increased engagement. And finally, although there was some work at Georgia Tech with open educational resources and digital learning objects, we really kicked it into high gear once COVID happened. And I think that with this renewed interest in open educational resources and digital learning objects, I think this is going to allow for the administration to support us in that area and possibly help us with maybe grant funding or look into funding options to support this. For instance, our organization is exploring the use of Articulate 360, Camtasia, we got a site license for Camtasia, and other tools for creating digital learning objects to work on that. And I think we're also exploring how we can share resources between institutions and other schools in order to leverage each other's expertise. So that's sort of in a nutshell, that's kind of what's been going on with instruction. But I'm going to hand it off on the next slide to Ximin, and I think she's going to talk about consultations.
Thank you, Alison. So another very important aspect of our online services is consultation. Georgia Tech Library provides consultation to cover discipline-specific support, for example, College of Engineering, College Business, Design, so on and so forth. We also provide support across disciplines, work like Alison and I do on database and multimedia, and patent. I would say actually those services are picking up a lot of traffic compared to the traditional department liaison kind of consultation. So we don't really have very specific or detailed stats to show us how much of the consultation came through in-person meetings and how much of them were online consultation. A bold guesstimate from me would be like half-half, although I feel like there were probably more in-person consultation, especially for the field Alison and I work in, because I feel like people get this extra sense of security if they can bring their device in or use our device and show us their screen and their software and have us like drive their device if needed to fix a problem. So that's been very popular pre-COVID. Since COVID shut down, we have to all move off campus. So we tried to use different channels to connect to our community. So the first channel was our traditional info desk. When people either stop by the library in person or they use a chat service, the staff members on this team, including Justin, they would chat with the users and really understand what kind of service and support they need. With that information, they would reroute the questions to the right librarian or specialist on the library team to help them. The second channel we were using was the online service request using Jira system. For people who are not very familiar with Jira, it's a ticketing system that you kind of fill out a form about your question, and then based on the information you fill in, the ticket will be sent to different teams like instruction, research support, technical support, IT, and then on every team there would be a manager assigning the tickets to specific people on the team to respond. So Jira Ticket really helps us monitor the service process because everyone's watching the tickets. So we all know what progress are those tickets making and what status they are in. It could be either pending or active, or it's being scheduled, or it's being completed. So that way it really helps us to monitor the chat, to monitor the tickets and make sure they don't fall incorrect compared to our traditional email communication, which is of course still a very important and popular channel for us to connect to our community. Because there are so many people we have been working over the years, so some faculty members are more comfortable using our email, and they share our email with the classes. So we still get a lot of consultation questions through email, which turn out to work maybe even better during COVID, because we don't need to run around from space to space for meetings and other things. Being able to sit in one space for longer hours help us focus on finishing the emails, instead of like, oh, I'm sending an email on my way to a meeting and I'll respond and maybe I'll forget. So I guess in a way it helps managing the emails a lot easier. The last channel we experimented since COVID is this online help desk. Data visualization was I think the first service in the library to try this out. We did this because before COVID, we have the lab, we have regular hours open for people to just stop by and ask questions. Since the COVID shutdown, one of the things I've been thinking was, how do we still create this sense of people can just come in and ask questions? They don't have to really struggle with, okay, I send an email, in one day I get a response, and then it's not really what I was thinking in, you know, this very slow and unpredictable communication style. So what we did is we ended up scheduling Monday through Thursday every day for 2 to 3 hours of our online help desk. When we have a meeting open, people can just hop in if they have a question, and we have a real person there to look at their question and possibly help answer that. So this service model, it took a minute for this one to pick up, but I think right now it's working really well. People like to share their screen, and sometimes they also share their documents with us. So it's this very easy, quick way to respond to questions. So we have a portfolio of ways connecting to people virtually. There were some challenges we saw early on during the remote work model. The one thing is to promote our services. Because originally people could just come into the physical space, they can grab a person and ask. And now when we're all off campus, how do we let them know how to find us? So we used multiple channels available for us to promote all the new communication opportunities, including our monthly newsletter. We have all the instruction offerings Alison just mentioned published on our monthly newsletter. We also have these online help desk hours listed along with the instruction sessions so that people who know to find information about the library through newsletters would also catch that information. The second one is the library class and events calendar. Of course, also the all the instruction sessions and the help desk hours and links are posted there. So if people are looking for something, they can easily find how to when our hours and how to connect to us. And the last thing was different services like Alison and my services. We updated our website with the new service offerings so people can figure out how to connect to us if they're looking at our website. The second challenge early on was about the tool selection. This one I will touch on in a little bit, but we went through the process of trying to figure out which were the best tools. For example, for the instruction sessions, originally we were using regular BlueJeans meetings. But like before COVID, we would have like 20, 30, 50 people signing up for workshops. That's a good number. And after COVID, all of a sudden my class had like over 100 people signing up. So I was like, is this going to break my regular BlueJeans events? How do I like make sure that everything works smoothly? So we went through a process of exploring new tools and use all these new tools for different types of communication. The opportunities this online consultation experience brought us was, I feel like this is actually in a way worked better than people coming into the physical space. I remember before COVID, every semester I could have about 5 to 10 appointments. Students are either 10 to 20 minutes late, or they just couldn't come, or they forgot. This was because they had to run from one class to the other. Sometimes one class was late, the other class was moved, or they run into their friends on campus, they stopped by and started chatting. All this interfered with their scheduling. So there were a lot of accidents happen before COVID when I was expecting people in the lab. But now everyone's sitting in front of a computer and we don't even need to worry about when to go to the next thing. We're staring at the computer and the reminders keep popping up. So people are very much on schedule now. Throughout this whole semester, I only had one student late for appointment, which was amazing. I was not expecting that, but I feel like after we lift off the restriction of space and commute, we actually get together more easily at this point. Okay, now I'm gonna pass it to Justin on the next slide to talk about the hardware offerings we have.
Hi, everyone. My name's Justin Ellis, and I'm the Public Services Lead, and I co-manage our Gadgets service, or our circulating hardware service. So the library provides hardware and multimedia equipment loans. We loan out everything from cameras to camera accessories, green screen and lighting kits, VR headsets, and iPads. Our students can request those items via a request page and a LibGuide that feeds into the JIRA ticketing system that Ximin Mi mentioned earlier. Under normal circumstances, we process a high volume of student requests for physical items. We have a dedicated space or office for in-person pickup and brief consultations. In 2019, for example, gadget circulation accounted for over 50% of all physical item circulation circulated for the library. Due to the shutdown, of course, most physical lending was suspended. However, we were still able to provide accommodations for device loans for researchers who were still working on campus. There were several researchers who were doing rapid prototyping, and I can give one specific example of a researcher who was working to develop PPE on campus and needed cameras to document the process. Overall, loan periods for physical items, hardware, and books were extended for users who were not able to return the hardware or items due to the closure. We waived fines, we adjusted policies, but more to the point, we also collaborated with our IT department to reallocate classroom laptops for remote users in need. So we were creatively repurposing our existing resources and adding them to our library ILS for circulation for long term. With the abrupt closure of campus, some students were left without access to a computer. So we worked with our internal partners to reallocate devices to meet the emergency need. Normally, our students connect with us via the library's Ask Us page, which has a chat that's staffed 24/7. So patrons can contact public services, and they can also place the hardware request via chat or submitting a support ticket. Device requests are typically routed to a queue in the ticketing system, checked out, and in these cases, we worked with logistics to send laptops to remote users in need. During the closure period, we updated our gadgets LibGuide with collection details and instructional content that was informed by some of our more common requests and frequently asked questions. We work pretty frequently with Alison and Ximin Mi for multimedia instruction classes or data visualization. So we try to keep that in mind with the information that we provide. During the break, we also developed a contactless pickup process and protocol using existing library self-service lockers for physical items. And as we came back to campus, computing areas in the building began to reopen with social distancing measures. We added additional peripherals for those devices, specifically keyboards and mice, and added those to the contactless pickup process. So peripherals were sanitized between uses using a small UVC light chamber. And with that, we can move to the next slide.
Great, I think that's me, yes. So we also, in addition to the circulating hardware, we had to find solutions for the services that provide access to specialized labs and specialized software. So pre-COVID, we have the data visualization lab, we have the multimedia studio, spaces that provide the students access to the licensed software. Once the COVID shutdown happened and the students and users were unable to use those labs, we had to research free and open source alternatives for students that they could use at home. Additionally, in addition to some of those free alternatives and open source alternatives, we implemented heavier use of the campus virtual machine, which is known as VLab at Georgia Tech. That's basically like a cloud-based desktop that students can log into, and it's just like they're sitting in the lab, except it's basically a lab in the cloud that has all the software that the library has a license agreement with installed on it. So students utilized that for a lot of the multimedia software, since we have an arrangement with Adobe to have that access on the cloud. In terms of some of the open source and free alternatives for multimedia, I was often recommending things like Canva or Audacity or Inkscape or GIMP, some of these tools that students could utilize on their own laptop if they wanted a local install of some of this software. And I think Ximin can talk a little bit about some of the data visualization tools that they implemented to replace the lab.
Yeah, just very quickly. Well, I think throughout the service development, we were consciously picking a set of tools to be both licensed and open source or free. But COVID really pushed this process. So we only have a few tools in the labs that we paid for. One is Tableau Desktop /server we have on campus. The second is ArcGIS, which is a professional mapping tool, and third is SAS, the statistical analysis tool. During COVID, we moved heavily from Tableau Desktop to Tableau Public, which is a similar version with less data capacity, data handling capacity, and cloud connection capacity. We heavily used QGIS to replace ArcGIS because it's open source. Also, we created 3 new Python workshops to replace all the SAS analysis functions. It might sound a little scary, but with the Python workshops we already had, these 3 workshops in total are 4.5 hours. So after 4.5 hours of training, you can safely move your work all from SAS to Python. That's about data viz. I noticed we're a little behind, so I'm gonna wrap up very quickly on the communication channels on the next 2 slides. Before COVID, we had some virtual communication tools as supplements of our in-person communication, including BlueJeans for classes and for remote workers to participate in meetings. And Microsoft Teams started to pop up around campus, but not really in library during COVID. And also Justin mentioned earlier, the Jira ticketing system to send in requests for instruction and hardware loan. Next slide. during COVID, we really try to creatively use or add new use cases that we see into all the tools we have available. For example, for BlueJeans, we moved our internal meetings. Initially, we moved all the internal meetings to the BlueJeans. I also mentioned that earlier on, we have the help desk meetings that all happen on BlueJeans meetings. Teams really picked up during the COVID. Now we moved all the library working groups and committees to Teams because it's incorporated into the Microsoft ecosystem. So we can share document, chat, check in with people, and do everything very easily. So that's our main communication channel we're using. Some of the credit classes on campus and we participated also happen on Teams. And of course, there are institute level and external collaborations happen with Teams too. And Jira, I will let Justin very quickly cover Jira. I think we have some new use cases here too.
Yes, so public services was one of the first departments library-wide to start using Jira about 1.5 years ago, and the use expanded while the building was closed. It was part of a larger service portal project with other departments and service desks being added into Jira, which fostered better interdepartmental communication and workflows. We used a separate queue for equipment requests where we separate further by device type for our general gadget requesting. Public services or customer support questions are handled in a sort of first tier reference support model with complex questions being referred to the appropriate department, service desk, or subject liaison. The ability to configure queues and workflows in Jira on the back end was vital to the success of our extended laptop loan service. It allowed us to manage a large volume of incoming requests, manage the responses, and communicate internally and externally securely while making notes for completed tickets, noting tickets that required follow-up, or adding other colleagues to specific tickets or issues. Jira and live chat both allowed the frontline staffers to provide patron support as we generally would 24/7 during the regular semester.
In addition to this existing tools, we also explored new free options, like we used BlueJeans events for large scale workshops, which it does not only have a bigger capacity, it also makes controlling and managing the students or attendees so much easier because we can assign them different roles. Attendees will be automatically muted and moderators could be our assistants to help control and give people access to share and talk. And of course, Zoom, which is, we did not use Zoom too much for our internal communication because we already have all these other options, but it's very popular for some external collaborations. So those are the tools we're using. And to the last slide.
Yeah, no, as we wrap up, we had a reflection on engaging with community and just some of our observations. And I think for me, just seeing that these virtual mechanisms and virtual channels were really instrumental in breaking down barriers with students was a big part of it. I think it just in general makes librarians and faculty approachable.
Justin.
And then going back to, again, talking about the ticketing system, that sort of helped smooth our internal and external communication and our information exchange with students, helped us better understand the types of questions that students had, particularly during the break period, and understand their needs. It improved consistency of responses overall because the system allows us to incorporate a knowledge base that's cross-departmental. And we're also able to view those tickets in an assessment scope and understand how many tickets we're receiving, how many tickets are closed, which tickets require follow-up, even getting granular to what's the length of time for response and how quickly a ticket was closed, and asking future questions about how to improve the service, how to improve response times, or be more proactive in our approach.
So the last thing is student engagement. At the beginning of COVID, we were really concerned that we were not being able to effectively engage students. But after 7 months, our virtual service models with instruction, consultation, equipment checkout, and some social and cultural activities proved to work really well. Actually, all the numbers look really good, and some of the numbers grow 2-3 times. So I guess this dynamic, robust service model is going to stay after COVID that we created during this period of time. So this pandemic was really a disaster, turning into an unexpected opportunity for our library to experiment and expand our services into the virtual space. Now, when we look back and reflect on this, COVID is, again, unexpected opportunity and a push and a drive, in a sense, I think, for all academic libraries to explore more versatile and resilient service models. And I look forward to see what Georgia Tech and other libraries would come out with some new services that could move between different spaces and cover a broad range of users. That is all we have for today.
Great. Thank you so much, all of you, for your presentations on this topic. I'm going to just stop sharing. And we're going to move into a Q&A at this point. So as folks are thinking about their questions or comments, please feel free to type them in the chat box. And Rebecca, if you don't mind turning off the recording so we can have a more